Hi, I'm Jeanette,
Hi, I'm Miss Dean.
and we're with Courageous Home Care. We have been having some really, really fun conversations. And last week was a beauty. This week we said we would pick up with a living trust, right? But let me tell you what happened, Ms. Musadine. While I was thinking about living trust, I just kind of Googled a couple of things. The two things that came up was a living will and an advance directive. Because last week we talked about Medicaid and Medicare, and we talked about the differences between the two and what services are provided by them. But a lot of times we also discussed last week that we don't know what we need until we need it, right?
Right.
But as we live, we're going to get old and we're aging, and we have loved ones who are taking care of us. So I think this is a fitting topic to discuss living wills, advanced directives, and also living trusts. So I thought, let's just kind of hit all of those. I don't know how much we're going to get into in this 30-minute period, but please let me, before we even start, let me put a little disclaimer. I need to put it on here. Not an attorney,
Sure
not a lawyer. I have no legal training, zero. So you definitely want to make sure that you have conversations with your family attorney if you have one. And if you don't have one, you might want to consult one when it comes to property. So let me make sure I have that disclaimer on there or in there. These are just some things that I know that comes up for families on a daily basis.
That's correct.
Health is premium, but we get sick. So let's talk a little bit about this living will and advanced directives. Now, you're a nurse.
Yes. I'm not a
And
lawyer either. So let's put that out there.
but you are a nurse.
I am a nurse.
And you're aware of advanced directives.
I am
Tell
aware
us
of
what that is, Mr. Ding.
So, advance directive is a legal document that you, as an individual, as long as you're in your right mind, competent, you can formulate one. And it can be done with your doctor's office. It can be done at the hospital if you're admitted. You can even do it from home.
Really?
Yeah. You just have to have a notary and a witness. But the advance directive is pretty much your wishes on paper while you're still alive and able to make decisions for yourself. And so it's very important to have that because if something were to happen to you where you can't become mentally incapacitated, your wishes are on paper. So no one will have to argue about this is what this person wants or this is what I heard that person say, at one time or another. It's just right there in writing, black and white. And usually that's there until you revoke it. So it's irrevocable. So
Meaning, let's break that down a little bit. If you take until you take it back,
take it back.
tear it up and
say never
don't want it.
mind, I
Okay.
don't want this anymore. Usually you'll make several copies once you put it in writing, and you will submit it maybe to the people that it's on your advance directive, put it in a lockbox. But the things that are usually on the advance directive is your wishes in terms of medical. So like if you go into the hospital, if your heart stops, would you want to be resuscitated? Would you want tube feeding? Would you want to be on the ventilator for a long time period or anything? So, and it can be modified. So it's not one or the other. Yes, I don't want this. Yes, I want this, and no, I don't want this. So it can be modified. It can say, in the event after 7 days, if I'm not getting any better, pull the plug, So, you don't feel pressure to say, oh, I'm making a life decision here while I'm still alive. But, in the same token, this is going to help your family out when you do need those interventions
to
done.
make those very important decisions. Yeah. This will keep a lot of families. Dealing with sickness and death are not easy at any given time because of the people that you love, no matter how well you prepare, because you miss the person and love the person who is either sick or gonna leave. And it's an uncomfortable decision.
Yes, it is.
However, I like what you said, if the decision is already down on paper, it eliminates or make it a little bit easier. With siblings and in groups, even with a spouse or when you're making decisions, sometimes the children won't agree with the decision that the spouse is making. But ultimately in the marriage, I think there's a hierarchy, right? Let me make sure I understand this right. So like if you're a husband or wife, the spouse can make the decision, if the medical decision for their partner, if there is no advance directive in place.
Yes.
And then if there's siblings, from my understanding, it's the oldest sibling out of the group that can make it's a hierarchy with the order. The oldest sibling can make the decision?
Not necessarily, because not every older sibling is responsible. So what comes down to it is the family has to agree, pretty much. But usually the individual will have an emergency contact person. So if my wife is not available, here's my next person. Okay. Yeah. So if you're going to put someone that's not responsible on your case and they're ready to see you go, and it could be the older sibling, and they're ready to see you go ahead and leave this planet Earth and get all your money, they're going to make that right decision for themselves, right? So no, it's not necessarily the oldest sibling or anything. It's the responsible party.
Okay.
And so, a lot of people will, especially when they go in the hospital, they'll say, who's your emergency contact? Who else do you want to put down as emergency contact? And usually that would be the person that will probably make the decision.
Okay.
If there's
the problem that a lot of probably doctors or hospitals run into, if that contact is not listed, that's where you run into problems. And then when you have family members who come up, then there's a possibility of there being dissension between the group on, no, go ahead and prolong life or not. Then you run into those type of situations. That's the advance directive is really good to let hospital officials know and families know. So we're not grappling with, do we give medical care or not? Do we resuscitate or not? Do we have surgery or not? Those kind of questions can be answered. Now let's talk about this this living will. Now, from my understanding, the living will is a form of an advance directive.
Yes, it is.
Okay. But the advance directive is a little bit broader in the sense that it will cover the medical or psychological, it'll name the medical or psychological person responsible for your care. And that's usually what you need to see an attorney with that, because it's, from my understanding, it's legally outlined.
Yes, it's legally outlined. Unless you have someone that knows the terminology. Social workers will do those.
Social workers
in the home. In the hospital.
And you can request it, correct? Because you said you could do it.
You can
so you can say, I want an advance directive. And when you're in the hospital, is there a cost associated with that?
No, it's free.
It's free. That's good to know. Same thing with power of attorney, correct?
Yes, it's free.
That's free. In the hospital with a social worker.
So power of attorney is a little different.
I'm sorry, I opened another can of worms. That wasn't on the topic, but I kind of got off. But that's a little different. Okay. So I'm gonna steer away from the power of attorney just because I really wasn't on a part of our conversation. Although they are a part of hospital, I know that they're used.
So the power of attorney is great for incapacitated an individual that is mentally incompetent, and they have to make a decision for them. So you have that next person in line. So that would be the person. That's your power of attorney.
Okay.
So it can fall in the same lines with the living will portion. But advance directive is straightforward. These are the things that I want. These are the things I don't want. I'm initialing all these boxes, and I'm signing. Here's my witness.
Broader and outlines specifically with regards to the mental, physical, and the financial. It's laid out a little bit more.
Financial is different. That's where you're going to living will.
Correct. But the living. Okay, so the living will is more. It's narrower, or it's more narrow than the advance directive. So the finances that you mentioned, if you want to spell out specifically who you will want to take over for you financially, the living will is going to name that individual It's going to name the assets, the properties in there. But equally, when we're talking about medical, right, it's going to also name the decision maker of who you want to be that person to make the decision. In the events when you want medical care or do not, it's a little more streamlined, and it is very specific with bullet points, not as broad. Am I on point here?
It's a little bit limited from advanced directive, because advanced directive is specifically for medical decisions.
Medical,
So that's why it's different.
So the financial can't be taken care of under the living will.
Living will.
Okay. All right. And again, consult an attorney.
Yes, for
because
sure.
those are the more important. They can help you kind of navigate the waters.
Yes.
But it's good discussions, especially when we're in healthcare. We're in in-home care. Those who are elderly, or even you have disabled adults, young adults who are medically fragile.
For sure.
And so having things like guardianships in place, they're so important legally to have certain safeguards in place medically for these individuals who are the decision makers or the responsible party, so that we're not the families are not grappling with the issues.
For sure.
And I put we in there the same way. We're not trying to figure out, because sometimes we're left with clients, right, who are in our homes, and if they don't have, they're their own person and don't have guardians.
Yeah.
And they pass away, and that's happened, and you have their property, that's a whole nother issue too. But that does happen too. Yeah. Right?
There's no one to give the assets to if they don't have it in writing.
Yeah. So those are real life things that do occur. So the next, I want to transition a little bit into kind of breaking out a little bit the difference between the living will that is more specific, that also can deal with the financial as well as the medical. The advanced directive is typically medical, and it's going to name the doctors. If it's psychiatric, it's going to name the mental health an attorney, or your medical providers. It's going to be very specifically on the do's and don'ts of what type of care you want, when you want to receive medical care. If you decide do not resuscitate me, I don't want medical care, or if I'm in the ICU past 5 days, I mean, it'll just lay out those very specific things. Do this or do not do that.
Exactly.
You want that. So let's segue to the trust.
I do want to touch base a little bit, because a lot of people think that they have to wait to do advanced directive until they're older. But we know, death comes to everyone, and it can be as young as whatever. I know because you're young, you want to still continue to live. But in the instance, say you're in a car accident and you are in the vegetative state, would you want to be hanging out for the longest that your family members have to see you suffer? So it's for everyone. Advanced directive is for everyone, just to know it's not for someone that's older and I'm not of age and I'm not doing this. And because people don't like to talk about death, it's hard to do. It's a very hard decision to make. You can tell your family all day long, this is what I want because you're so young. Go ahead and keep me on the ventilator. But would you really want to be on the ventilator with the trach for months and months in a coma? I don't know. But I just wanted to throw that out there. You want to just try to, the what ifs. That's kind of what you look at, the what ifs. Because we all going to have what ifs.
That's true.
Okay.
I love that. Thank you so much for adding that in there. Accidents that we have, unforeseen medical medical issues that do occur. They happen, and you've got to be ready to at least have answers.
Yes.
Oftentimes, probably more times than not, we run into situations where a lot of families are not ready.
That's right.
Because we want to be optimistic and think I'm going to be here for a long time, and just sometimes that's not probable.
That's right.
Okay, so let's talk about this living trust. We're going to segue over into that. You kind of brushed on it a little bit last week, and I thought let's just hit a little bit of all this. Again, I want to throw this disclaimer in. Micheline and I, we're not attorneys, we're not lawyers, but I know that you've had some personal encounters with that, having to deal with that, and learn some things along the way. And like a lot of us do, we don't know what we need until we need it. And then when we need it, we're like, oh my, How do I move on this? So let's talk about a living trust. What separates a living trust from a living will? Do you want to kind of give me some separation there?
You can incorporate a living will with a trust, so it can go into your trust, which is still specifying where your assets are going to go when you pass away, or however the case may be, and it's spelled out according to your assets. But again, even though you have a living will, that does not exempt you from paying your taxes or whatever you owe to debtors when you pass away. So it's still going to be carried on to the individual that is on your living will, but they will pay your debt first before they get whatever money is coming to them. So as far as the trust, it prevents you from your assets going to probate. Okay, so if you don't have a trust, even though you have a living will, your assets can still go to probate.
And probate is family court.
Yes.
Okay.
The court.
And when your assets go into probate, is it frozen? What happens in that process?
Well, they have to do like the whole court scenario, whatever. And so again, they go through, who do you owe? So the court take over instead of you, the family. Instead of family taking over and saying, this is my loved one's property. They do owe X, Y, and Z to this company and that. Let me pay that off and then be done, or settle, or however, because you can settle with people that, people owe money to. The courts will take it, and it can be long time periods. And then all the assets are frozen. So if the bank account, no one can even touch it, Whereas if it's already in a trust, as soon as that person passes, the family can jump in. If they're the ones on the trust, they can jump in and divide out their assets to their loved ones. So as far as the trust, while you're living, you can make a trust. It can be revocable or irrevocable. So the revocable one is where you can switch people out. It could be this person today. No, this person made me mad. They're not going to take care of my finances. Let me switch to someone else. And then irrevocable, and then you can be involved still in your revocable trust. So in the event that, say, you want to still tap into the finances that you have in the trust, you can still do that. Irrevocable is not yours anymore. You've given it away to whoever you gave it to. It's a done deal.
And typically in there is spelled out in your trust who you designate the amount you want to go to each individual or entity or organization.
Percentage or whatever.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's typically an attorney who's doing that.
Yes, an attorney have to do that. Yes.
Okay.
But it prevents your assets from bigger things. So we talked about Medicaid and Medicare last week.
We did. We did.
So there are some individuals, they have trust and still on Medicaid, because Medicaid, you have to make a certain amount of dollars, which is very, very minimum. I think we looked up, was it 1,100 or something?
It's a very small amount.
So you can still have these assets, but it's frozen into a trust. So it's irrevocable. So you can't go and use that asset, sell it or whatever, because you're now on Medicaid. And so they see you as literally having nothing because it's irrevocable. It's been passed on to somebody else. And so you can get services still through Medicaid and still have all these assets, but you've passed it on to someone else. It's still your assets, but it's not really yours. It's like
because it's kind of just their holding.
Yeah, it's not yours. You've given it to whoever you assigned to.
Assigned it.
So,
and when you assign it, so that once those assets are assigned to someone else and you designate, they're not legally obligated to come back then and take care of you with those assets. I mean, once you
unless you got some nice people.
Once you assign it, it's their money.
It's their money,
and they can make the decision that they want to with it.
Right.
I think that's important for people to know. So once you sign it over, you have no assets, and then you can then receive the benefits or services that are out there to get help.
Yes.
How common is that?
Not very common, because not a lot of people really look into that, or maybe they don't have assets, especially individuals going into Medicaid. But it is an option to get the governmental services, because a lot of times you can't really pay for these services. Healthcare is really expensive. And even care, if you had to go to a nursing home, you're looking at almost probably $10,000 a month. Who can afford that?
Correct. Very expensive.
So unless you already had a long-term care insurance, and that's another ball of wax. But it's a possibility if you have long-term care insurance, they'll pay for you, while you're on the skilled, or the permanent placement, residential placement. But so not very common. A lot of people don't really research a lot of those legalities, to get the services, but it's out there.
I was just sitting there thinking as you were talking, there are a number of people, I know you said it's not common, that would have assets and then, assign them over to a designated family member friend, and then have nothing. But we've seen people who have had medical complications that alter their entire existence. So they were high earners, wage earners, and were doing quite well in life. And this sudden illness came in and wiped out savings. And while the house was theirs, life changed because they can't they can no longer get around the home. Home has stairs, whole life is different. And then they have to then turn over those assets and are forced to and see life from a different perspective. You and I have seen that in the company and how challenging that is for family members to adjust with that. Even the ones who are providing the caregiver who is providing the care for their mom, dad, or loved one. So it happens. It does happen.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about what ballpark are we looking at when you're talking about consultation fees? Is there any way to say what that is, or it just varies from attorney to attorney?
It varies
for
from
assisted will,
and it depends how much assets you have too.
Okay.
The living will is the easiest part of it. Is putting that trust together is really
it's a more challenging. Okay. But the living will is the easier part.
Yeah.
The of course the POAs, you said the power of attorneys, those are pretty. They're not costly at all.
Yeah.
It's the trust is the larger part of that.
Yes.
So you really want to make sure you're tapping in. And you know what? I mean, how do you even, here's another question that I was thinking about when I was kind of reading through some of this information. If I'm a person who has kind of new and I'm just going into this area, am I going, do we talk to attorneys who just do living trust? Do I look that up?
Yes. It's called family law.
Okay.
So you look up family law and they will be able to navigate and guide you what you need to do.
Okay.
And you can do a consultation and that's free usually. And then after that, if you choose to do their services, and they'll give you the fee when you do your consultation.
And that falls under that because there are some attorneys, that's all they do. Or living trust. That's it. That's all they do. And
family law.
Specialize in that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. So you might want to make sure, we're looking at these fees, and so you're not absorbing a high amount. But for those of us who are, for the clients that we serve, who are on the other end of spectrum, that doesn't still mean you can't have that advance directive, right? That doesn't mean that you can't.
Is still free. You can do an advance directive again with your doctor's office, the hospital. And you can even do one at home, literally, if you look up. I wouldn't say do these forms if you don't know anything about it, but you can pull up forms to do those also. But I'd rather you do it with a provider, a care provider. At least you do the right thing and have it spelled out the way that you want it to be spelled out. Because it's going to be notarized, and that's the advance directive. Some people will say, I do not want to be resuscitated. And so the physician, the doctor have to write an order. This person is a DNR. And those individuals usually will have to present that to the ambulance or whoever comes and pick them up, that they're a DNR, do not resuscitate. So usually they have that advance directive on their door with a purple piece of paper that says, do not resuscitate. So
and that way, all who know them, that's helpful, including family.
Helpful.
So they understand that wish was given or provided to you before care. There's no confusion about how to handle this individual. That's good to know. It's really good information today. We have we've covered a lot today. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
I don't know. I looked at some pages. I think it was like 10 pages. I say 8 to 10 pages that I tried to hand off to you to say, can you look at this? And I read through it. And Musadin was like, I got it. I already know. And I was like, okay, I read through some of the bullet points and I read over this, and I kind of had some mental questions going along the way, but it's good information to know. Yeah. I want to say thank you again for taking time out your schedule to come and hang out again. We hang out every Friday. This has been good. Thank you to Mr. Wilson for providing the platform and for us to be able to come in to and the wonderful studio to be able to come in and talk about these issues. I am so grateful for you bringing that up, that it came out of that Medicaid, Medicare discussion for living trusts and living wills and advanced directives. It's good information. We didn't touch much on power of attorneys, but it's good to know that the costs with some of these, there is a way to be able to handle a lot of your medical needs and your financial ones, and it doesn't have to require a lot of money, and in some instances without an attorney. So that is a possibility. So thank you for sharing that, Mr. Dane. I appreciate that so much. So next week we're gonna come in, I guess, with another hot topic. They just get better and better, don't they? Every week. And I just leave out of here. I don't know about you. I leave going, okay, I'm thinking about just what else? What else can we get into? So I hope this information has been helpful. And thank you so much for sharing, because I know some of this you've had to chart yourself and go through.
I've had to do it myself. So first time, so you know the information, and it's easier just to rattle it off because I've already been through this. I've done this. All
right. So we'll see you next week with another hot topic. I am Jeanette Bush.
And I'm Eucelian Harrell. Again, we do have a Facebook. We have a Facebook page. Like us on the Facebook, and we also have a YouTube channel now, Courageous Home Care YouTube.
Yay.
So we need you to go check it out, subscribe, so you can tap into.
Because we can see all the videos, right?
Yes, we'll see all our videos we've done. We're just excited to continue to do these because that's our joy, just to educate as much as possible of the information we know.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dean.
You're welcome.
This has been fun. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.